Every day, universities are thinking of this idea of reconciliation. They're figuring out how to indigenize. They're navigating the complexities of decolonization. And this is hard for universities, as they are primarily Western, British, and French thought. This is a new topic for them, and something that is coming into spaces since 2016. But wherever they are in their journey, wherever they are in the beginning or complex nature of reconciliation and decolonization, I want to help. And today I thought about how I can help and how I can navigate. And the importance, I thought, was helping with an analogy, an idea. And that idea is a glowing yellow neon backpack. Now, this glowing neon backpack that is warm and loving and caring is held by Indigenous peoples. In universities, Indigenous students and faculty and staff all have these bright, glowing, yellow, warm, comforting, protective backpacks. But what are they? What is in the backpack? Well, hopefully you can guess that it is Aboriginal and treaty rights. It is Mi'kmaq rights that have sustained our peoples for generations. It is in our backpacks. Indigenous people know we have this backpack. We feel the burden and the weight of this backpack and the huge responsibility of this backpack on our shoulders. A responsibility to our ancestors. A responsibility to the next 7 generations. A responsibility to maintain and preserve this backpack. Now, if any Indigenous students or Mi'kmaq students need reminding, they only need to go outside today on a sunny day and to look up at the sun and to look behind them and to see the shadow. Our Mi'kmaq creation story notes that the shadows is what grounds us to our ancestors. It's what grounds us to the spirit world. Me, my ancestors, and every other Indigenous person are walking the halls, the royal we of me and my ancestors and our collective rights in these spaces. To better understand Mi'kmaq and treaty rights, I need to introduce myself. My name is Annie Battiste. I am a namesake and a Mi'kmaq woman from the Potlotek First Nations in Unama'ki. It is one of the 7 districts of the Mi'kmaq of our traditional lands, and it is where I get my Mi'kmaq rights. It is where my Mi'kmaq rights come from and have been cultivated for thousands and thousands of years. My ancestors have given me Mi'kmaq rights. My ancestors got their rights from generations and generations of Mi'kmaq people's responsibility on this land. They are the holders of sovereignty on this land. If you only need to know more about Mi'kmaq rights or Ulnu rights or one of the many ways in which we call it, I suggest you look at the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Or look at the UNDRIP Act in Canada to better understand these very specific and important and constitutionally enshrined rights. Now, UNDRIP or the UNDRIP Act all are talking about the 46 articles of what makes these things very specific. Now, I don't want to talk just about my Mi'kmaq rights or my Ulnu rights, or for others, Aboriginal rights, inherent human dignity. Whatever the words you want to use, they're a very important thing that universities need to think of. But I also want to talk to you about being an heiress. Now, not the heiress like Paris Hilton, who's rich and has lots of money, but an heiress to the peace and friendship treaties on this land. I'm an heiress and you're an heir. It doesn't matter what time or space your family came here, if it was multiple generations ago or you came yesterday. You are part of a relationship with the land. You are part of a relationship called the Peace and Friendship Treaties. That was signed by my ancestors and some of your ancestors in 1726. It was something that was reaffirmed and recommitted to in 1752, 1760, and 1761, and a few times after that. It is something that when you walk into the universities, you can see land acknowledgements, and there was one today that talked about this utmost relationship. Now, to get back, though, to the university, I want to talk more about this backpack. I want to talk about this neon, glowing, bright backpack. And what does it mean? I work in an academic institution. I, every day, wearing my yellow, glowing backpack, come into these spaces with the responsibility from my ancestors and my namesakes and my family to say, how do me and other university students, faculty, staff, Indigenous, non-Indigenous, think, reconcile, and interpret these rights? This backpack, this glowing backpack that I keep bringing up, is meant to shield me from discrimination. It's meant, and my ancestors ensured that it was reminded, top of mind in all peace and friendship treaties, that it was supposed to keep me warm and safe. It was supposed to protect my knowledge, my culture, my language, and everything that I do. This glowing backpack was supposed to be a very, very important thing that we need to think about in universities. Now, I'm not the first person to think about a backpack analogy. There is another, and her name was Peggy McIntosh. And she was revolutionary in her time in 1989 when she wrote an article. And this article, called Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, she used an analogy of a knapsack that was invisible, that no one could see. And what it was talking about the privilege and the societal unearned privileges that she received based on her skin color. She wrote an article of 50 different things that she didn't realize until writing that article was about unearned privileges that her skin tone received. Now, if I'm reimagining this backpack analogy and I'm honoring Peggy McIntosh, it is the exact opposite of Peggy's article is what I'm talking to you about today. We were supposed to have this bright, glowing backpack, this governance, this system, these navigations in all spaces that reminded you that this backpack was there. But due to history and policies and John A. Macdonald, that is not where we are at in the spaces today. Our bright, glowing backpacks are really invisible. And I want to talk a little bit more about that, but I recognize that I'm talking a lot about a backpack. And I even so much wanted to wear a backpack, and if I could have found a neon backpack, the story would have been different today. But I thought as a 5'1", short, brown-haired girl, you'd be getting Dora the Explorer vibes. So instead, I wore my brightest clothes, I thought about my ancestors today, and moved forward. So I want to talk to you a little bit about rights, and I don't have a lot of time to talk about it, but I want to remind you that Indigenous rights, Aboriginal rights, Mi'kmaq rights are enshrined into the very fabric of what it means to be a Canadian. And you might ask me, and you might say, well, how? And the answer is through the Constitution. The supreme law of Canada, as it says in Section 52 of the Constitution, also says the existing Aboriginal and treaty rights of Aboriginal people are hereby recognized and affirmed. Now, the important words, there is actually quite a bit, but the most important for this talk today is the word existing. It means that Canada did not give Mi'kmaq people rights. It did not give Aboriginal people rights, but they existed before, during, and if there is an after of Canada. It's also talked about in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, a very important charter when we talk about the university. Section 25 of that says that nothing in the charter can reduce or diminish Aboriginal or treaty rights. Nothing can dim the backpack. Nothing can tell you that you can do it if it is in the way or reducing or not protecting or honoring Indigenous and treaty rights. That is a very important talk for today. Now, what does Aboriginal and treaty rights mean? And I think the newer term is, what does reconciliation mean? Now, reconciliation is not a buzzword. It's not a good idea. It's not something that you choose to do, but something that is actually embedded in the very fabric and identities and principles of being Canadian. It was supposed to be the number one utmost relationship that existed in Canada. It was supposed to be two canoes going down the river, never touching and never interfering with governance. It is and continues to be a conversation at foot. Now we come into spaces like the university, and they're doing great work, and Canadian universities are in many different stages of this work. But we come in, and a lot of the time, it's me, an Indigenous person, a Mi'kmaq woman, who has to tell people I have rights. It becomes my job to remind people constantly of this bright, glowing backpack. And we have to think about it a little bit differently in reconciliation, and we have to figure out how we can move on reconciliation. I've had a lot of people tell me a lot of really important things about reconciliation, but at its heart, at the integrity of reconciliation, is honoring Aboriginal rights and honoring treaty rights that exist in Canada and on the land that you're standing. Now, universities, with this task, being tasked with the utmost relationship in Canada, are still working towards how to get this done. How do we maintain the rights of Aboriginal people at the highest levels in our universities, our classrooms, our staff rooms, and at our dinner tables? And usually there is ideas, and sometimes what happens is reconciliation in its intensity and its bigness is placed with equity, diversity, inclusion, or multiculturalism, or as historically marginalized people. And today I think I want to talk to you about this idea that we need to begin to really percolate and think about how we navigate the reconciliation, the Aboriginal treaty rights, the responsibilities of this land, and the ancestors that are forward in universities. And I caution universities to not take this utmost relationship and place it within equity, diversity, and inclusion, and multiculturalism. Although they're great, and I love EDI, and I think EDI are the same allies that are working towards reconciliation, we need to really strategize, create personnel, budget lines, and think about how we can ensure that nothing we're doing at any university is diminishing or making this backpack dimmer. Before I leave you, I want to give you a little idea or thoughts to think about. There's an analogy that is used, the head, heart, and hand, to talk about reconciliation. It is a tool for individuals to think about reconciliation and to figure out where they are on the journey of reconciliation. For a lot of people, this is a new topic. If it is, welcome. You have a lot of education to learn in the next little bit. The first step is about unpacking and learning and recognizing and understanding what this neon glowing backpack means. Means for you, means for your organization, means for Canada. Once we learn and we understand and we look at the history and we say, how did we get here? What is the history that has impacted us? Then we're on, usually, to the next phase. And the next phase is the heart. It is the space of realizing and feeling and understanding the consequences of not doing this work. The urgency to doing this work. The feelings of recognizing your place in reconciliation, and that it's not just maybe a part of the job that you hold, but a thing that should be a part of every component of your life. A lot of people say to me, and understand it through trauma and spaces and learning and language revitalization and the importance of it, are all core at the heart of understanding. And the last stage is usually action. And I hope that you say, I'm ready for action, and that is what I want to do. But I want you to be reminded that when you're doing action, when you're moving forward, there's a lot of things you need to think about. There is action that you need to do to understand and internalize why reconciliation is important, even if it maybe is the first time you're hearing about it. We need action in our interactions in friends and family and dinner tables and at different restaurants and all sorts of different spaces. We need action with policy change. We need action with ideological shifts that brightens my backpack, that reaffirms my backpack, and I don't have to tell you that my backpack glows. You already know. You are the first ally to tell me in spaces to say, I see your backpack. I feel the warmth of your ancestors. I understand how in which you as a collective peoples are moving forward in reconciliation, and I want to come alongside you. So today, I want to remind you to think in all spaces at the dinner table, in staff rooms, in classrooms, in interactions, and always think about this neon glowing backpack that is filled with rights from our ancestors, the warmth of our ancestors, and that this is an important thing to think about in all spaces in universities. Walaliok, thank you.